Welcome to a place where love is not just a story, but a heartbeat that echoes through every word. Here, we step into the silence of loneliness, where nights feel endless and hearts ache for closeness. We walk into the unexpected, where love arrives in the most ordinary moments, igniting fires thought long forgotten. We embrace the awakening, where passion flows not as a fleeting spark, but as a flame so consuming it binds body and soul as one. And we discover healing, where desire becomes something timeless, where laughter replaces silence, and every wound finds its warmth in love's embrace. This is not fiction, it is life, it is truth, it is the story of finding love when it seemed too late, and realizing it was always waiting. Stay with me, because what unfolds here is deeper than a tale. It is a journey of the heart. The nights stretched longer than they should have, heavy with silence that pressed against the skin like an invisible weight. The hours passed slowly, the world asleep, but inside there was no rest. The bed felt too large, too cold, too empty, a constant reminder of the absence that lingered for years. The ache wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was steady, quiet, and relentless. It lived in the background of every day like a shadow that never left, a hunger that could not be fed by routine, work, or distractions. Time has a way of dulling certain wounds, but this was different. This was the kind of wound that didn't scream, it whispered, pulling at the heart in moments that seemed ordinary. Sitting at a table alone, seeing couples laughing in a restaurant, hearing the faint sound of laughter from neighboring houses in the evening, it was in those moments the silence grew deafening. The body longed for touch, the soul longed for closeness, yet both remained starved, afraid the chance would never come again. The days became a blur, one blending into the next, and with each one, the heart grew a little quieter, the light a little dimmer. Smiles were given, conversations were held, but inside there was only a hollow place where warmth should have lived. There was a fear in admitting how empty it felt, because to speak it aloud made it real, and to make it real meant facing the possibility that nothing would ever change. Loneliness wasn't just about being without someone beside the bed at night. It was about feeling invisible, walking into a room and noticing no eyes lingered, no one's gaze searching with curiosity or interest. It was about being surrounded by people yet feeling unseen, untouched, as if fading into the background of life itself. The mirror reflected the years gone by, and with them came questions of worth, of beauty, of whether the fire within had gone out long ago. But even in the silence, there was still a faint flicker of hope, fragile and quiet, a hidden hunger that refused to die. It came in the smallest moments, when a song played on the radio and stirred memories of being held once, of being wanted once. It came when watching the world outside, couples walking hand in hand, laughter in the streets, kisses exchanged as if they were as natural as breathing. Each sight was a reminder of what once was and what might never be again. Yet still the longing lived. There were nights when the body ached, not just for touch but for connection, for someone who would see not only the surface but the soul underneath. There were tears shed in silence, tears wiped away quickly before anyone could notice. And with every year that passed, the fear deepened. That time had taken away the chance to ever feel that closeness again, that love and passion were for others, not for this heart. The silence was not just in the house, it was in the heart. It became a companion, a cruel one that sat beside every meal, followed every step, and whispered at every turn. Loneliness taught how heavy absence could feel, how the lack of love could wound as much as loss itself. It showed how the body could forget the feeling of being desired, how the soul could begin to doubt its own worthiness of being cherished again. Yet even as the nights dragged on, even as the emptiness carved its space deeper, the hidden hunger never left. It waited quietly, almost stubbornly, beneath the fear, a hunger to be touched again, to be seen, to be held so tightly that the silence would finally shatter. It was that quiet hope, that fragile, trembling flame that kept the heart beating through all the long years of emptiness, waiting for something or someone that might awaken it again. And then, when least expected, the silence began to break. It happened when the heart was least prepared, when the silence of long years had almost convinced that love was nothing but a memory. The moment was ordinary on the surface, nothing dramatic, nothing rehearsed, yet something shifted in the air so suddenly it could not be ignored. There he was, a presence that seemed to carry warmth in every glance, as though his very being spoke to the emptiness that had lingered for so long. His eyes met mine, and in them there was something I had forgotten existed, a depth, a truth, a recognition that pierced straight through the layers of guarded silence. It wasn't a loud moment. It wasn't fireworks or a grand declaration. It was subtle, quiet, like a flame being struck in darkness. The way he looked held a kind of honesty that words could never form. A silent language passed between us, one that needed no explanation. The years of loneliness, of walking unseen, seemed to vanish in that gaze, as if finally someone had found the part of me that had been lost even to myself. The conversation that followed felt effortless, like the kind of dialogue that doesn't begin with words but with energy. His voice carried warmth, a softness laced with strength, and every word seemed to draw me in closer. There was no performance, no mask, just truth, raw and unshaken, that in itself was enough to stir something deep within, something that had been buried under fear and silence for far too long. The first time his hand brushed mine, it was as if the world paused, a touch so simple, so unassuming, yet it reached places within that had been untouched for years. The skin remembered instantly what the heart had tried to forget, that closeness was not just about touch, but about recognition. It was as though his hand whispered, "I see you, I feel you. You are here alive and worthy of being wanted." That single touch broke down walls carefully built over years of solitude. Every encounter after that was a discovery. The way his laughter carried through the air, the way his presence filled spaces that once felt empty, the way his nearness brought color back to days that had been gray for so long. The heart that had grown accustomed to silence now beat with a restless rhythm, awakened by something it no longer believed it deserved. His eyes spoke where words were too fragile, telling me I was seen, desired, and cherished, even before anything more was said or done. There were moments of hesitation, moments when fear tried to creep back in, whispering that this was too much, too sudden, too impossible. Yet every time doubt rose, his presence silenced it, not with promises or grand gestures, but with the undeniable truth of his closeness. The way he leaned in, the way he held a gaze just a little longer than necessary, the way his hand lingered when it touched mine, these were truths words could never carry, and yet they said everything that needed to be said. The night his lips first touched mine, it was not just a kiss, it was an awakening. The years of emptiness, of silence, of longing, melted away in that moment. His kiss was not rushed, not careless. It was deliberate, filled with tenderness and hunger all at once. It felt like he was breathing life back into places within me that had been asleep for too long. Every second of it told me I was no longer invisible, no longer forgotten. I was alive again, and in his arms, every wound of the past began to lose its power. With him, love didn't feel like something to be earned or begged for. It felt natural, unforced, like something that had been waiting quietly until the right moment to appear. His presence lit a fire I thought had died, a fire that spread not with recklessness, but with steady, undeniable warmth. It wasn't about filling the void of loneliness. It was about igniting something that was always there, waiting for the one who could truly see it. The unexpectedness of it all made it even more real. Love had not arrived with warning or preparation. It had simply appeared in the most ordinary of moments, with the most extraordinary of impact. His eyes, his touch, his presence, all of it reminded me that life has a way of giving back what we thought was gone forever. That night, lying in his arms, the silence that had haunted for years was gone, replaced not only with passion, but with something deeper, something unshakable, the kind of love that doesn't just touch the body, but awakens the soul. And in that awakening, I knew the years of loneliness had only been leading me here, to him, to this, to a love that came where it was least expected, yet felt as if it had always been destined, and nothing was ever the same again. The moment his arms wrapped around me, something inside gave way. It wasn't just an embrace. It was the breaking of years of walls, the collapse of defenses built from silence, fear, and loneliness. His warmth sank into me like fire melting through ice, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself be held without resistance. The weight of all those empty nights seemed to fall away in that single instant, as if the universe had been waiting for this exact moment to remind me what it meant to feel alive again. His breath was close against my skin, steady and grounding, yet every second of it sent shivers racing through me. The closeness wasn't only physical, it reached deeper, to a place I had hidden from for years. My body trembled not from fear but from awakening, a trembling born of desire long buried beneath the layers of guarded solitude. In his arms, I felt seen, wanted, and consumed all at once, and it was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. The first kiss followed like a spark meeting dry wood, igniting instantly into flame. His lips against mine carried both gentleness and hunger, as though he wanted to taste not only my mouth, but every secret, every ache, every forgotten longing. I melted into him without thought, as if I had been waiting my whole life for this exact collision. The kiss was not rushed, not desperate, but it was deep, deliberate, full of meaning. Every second of it whispered promises my heart had stopped believing in, and with every breath I surrendered a little more. When his hands traced the outline of my back, every inch of skin awakened under his touch. It was as though my body remembered him before my mind could even catch up, responding to every caress with a hunger I could no longer suppress. The passion was not wild recklessness. It was something deeper, something that came with weight, intensity, and purpose. The way he touched me was not just desire, it was reverence, as though he wasn't just holding a body, but a soul. Clothes slipped away like barriers we no longer needed, and with each layer gone, so too went the years of emptiness. His hands moved with certainty, not demanding, but inviting, guiding me into a space where vulnerability became strength. When his lips touched my skin, I closed my eyes and let the years of silence finally break apart, replaced by the sounds of breath, of closeness, of two hearts finding their rhythm in one another. The first time our bodies became one, I gasped, not from surprise, but from the sheer intensity of it. It was as if two worlds collided in a perfect storm, every nerve alight, every sense heightened beyond recognition. It wasn't a fleeting moment of lust, it was deeper, richer, as though something sacred had been unlocked. His movements were steady, tender yet powerful, each one pulling me further into him, into us. I clung to him, nails digging into skin, desperate to hold onto the reality of what was happening, terrified that if I let go, it would all vanish like a dream. Our breaths grew heavier, tangled together, filling the room with the sound of life returning to places that had been silent for too long. His whispers against my ear, his murmurs of closeness, sank into me deeper than any words ever had. In those moments, time disappeared. There was no past, no future, only the now, only the fire that burned between us, consuming everything in its path. Every wave of passion carried me higher, breaking me apart and putting me back together at the same time. My body shook under him, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of release, of giving myself completely, of allowing every guard to fall. I had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted in such a way, to be worshipped not only with hands and lips, but with devotion. It was as though every part of me was being rewritten, reshaped by the power of his love and desire. And when the intensity finally slowed, when his weight rested against me and his heartbeat pressed into my chest, I felt more complete than I ever had. Wrapped in his arms, still trembling from the fire we had shared, I realized that this was more than passion. It was rebirth, a consuming flame that didn't just burn for a moment, but promised to keep burning, steady and unshakable. Lying there, skin against skin, heart against heart, I knew that something irreversible had happened. The loneliness that once defined me no longer had power. In its place stood a love so deep, so consuming, that it had rewritten everything I thought I knew about myself, about desire, about connection. His embrace had shattered the silence of years, and in its place a flame had risen, tender, wild, unending, and nothing in me would ever be the same again. What began with fire soon deepened into something far greater, something that reached beyond desire and passion into a place where the heart finally felt safe again. In the beginning, it was the hunger of bodies finding each other, the urgency of forgotten longing finally released, but with every touch, every kiss, every whispered word, something more began to grow. It wasn't just about skin against skin anymore. It was about the way his presence wrapped around every broken part, the way his arms became a place where the past no longer had claws. There was a gentleness in him that matched his intensity, a balance that made the closeness feel eternal. He didn't just hold with strength, he held with understanding, as though he knew the weight carried for years without ever needing to be told. When laughter spilled from his lips, it filled the emptiness like sunlight pouring into a room long kept in shadow. That laughter became medicine, healing the silence that once sat so heavy in the chest. Nights that once felt endless and hollow became something entirely different. They became sanctuaries, sacred hours where closeness erased loneliness, where two bodies and two souls found rhythm together. There were evenings spent tangled in sheets, not only in passion but in tenderness, whispering truths into the darkness, creating a world where nothing felt missing anymore. Every lonely night of the past seemed to have led here, to these moments of belonging that finally gave meaning to the years of emptiness. It was in the way he reached for my hand without hesitation, in the way his touch carried comfort even when no words were spoken. It was in the way his eyes softened whenever they lingered on me, as if saying, "You are here, you are mine, and you are enough." That look broke through walls in ways passion alone never could. It wasn't lust that made me feel alive. It was love, deep and unshakable, rooted in connection that felt timeless. There were times when old fears rose, when memories of loneliness tried to creep back in, whispering doubts that this couldn't last. But every time he silenced them, not by force, but by simply being there. His arms never wavered, his voice never faltered, his touch never pulled away, and slowly, those wounds that once defined me began to fade. The pain of being unseen, untouched, unloved, it was no longer a burden I carried alone. In his embrace, it dissolved, piece by piece, replaced by warmth, laughter, and closeness that healed in ways I never thought possible. Even the simplest moments became profound. Sharing a meal, walking side by side, lying together in silence, each one carried a weight, a reminder that love had finally returned in its purest form. It was no longer about searching for passion to fill the emptiness. It was about building a bond so steady it left no room for emptiness at all. Desire had been the beginning, but love, real, deep love, became the foundation. There was a night when the rain fell heavy outside, and we lay together with nothing but the sound of our breathing and the storm in the background. His arms tightened around me, and in that simple act, I felt years of loneliness wash away. The storm could rage outside, but in his embrace there was calm, safety, belonging. That was the moment I knew fully. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't fragile. This was timeless. To be held so completely, to be seen so deeply, to have wounds turned into something beautiful, that is what true connection feels like. It is not fleeting. It is not shallow. It is the kind of bond that transforms every silence into laughter, every scar into strength, and every night into a place of love. What began as desire had become healing, had become home, and in his arms I finally knew what it meant to belong. If these words touched you, if you felt even a glimpse of your own heart within this story, then let this not be the end, but the beginning. Love, in its truest form, arrives when least expected and heals in ways we never imagined. If you believe in love's power to awaken, to restore, and to transform loneliness into belonging, then join this journey with me. Like this video, share it with those who need reminding, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of a love that is raw, real, and eternal. Until we meet again, may your nights be filled with warmth, your days with laughter, and your heart with a love that makes you feel alive.